Hello everyone, welcome to your first video about The Crucible, the play that we're going to start reading this week. This is our first introductory slideshow, and you're going to be taking some notes in your packet. So you'll need your packet next to you while we watch this video. It's called, What Do You Mean They Couldn't Do That? We are going to talk about who the Puritans are and some of the crazy laws that they had in their society. All right, so who were the Puritans? The Puritans were a very strict type of Protestant. Protestant is a type of Christian, so this is a religious designation, and they wanted to purify the Church of England in the 1600s, late 1600s. They believed that the Church of England had become corrupt and sinful, and they wanted to separate from the Church of England. So the Puritans actually left England and came to what is now the East Coast of the United States. And they wanted to purify religion by using the Bible as the word of law on earth. So that meant that they were very, very strict. Like they wanted to follow the rules of the Bible literally on earth. So that meant that religion wasn't just ruling like what happened in heaven or hell, but it was actually the rule of law on earth. So the Puritans are going to be the people that we're reading about in the Crucible. All right, so the Puritans had a lot of strict laws and rules, like I just said, and one of their laws is that they banned Christmas. Why was Christmas banned? This is Oliver Cromwell. He was an army general and politician for the Puritans in Massachusetts, and he said Christmas is a sin. He was involved with banning Christmas. But why did they ban Christmas? So Christmas is actually not written in the Bible. It's a human invention. And so the Puritans wanted to follow the Bible directly. And so they thought that Christmas could no longer be celebrated because it was too closely linked to old pagan beliefs, and it was banned. So no more Christmas. They also banned a lot of other things in the Puritan society. So singing was not allowed unless you were singing in church without any instruments. So it could only be used for the purpose of religious worship. Drinking alcohol was also banned. Dancing was also banned. No dancing allowed. It was considered sinful. Begging was banned. Gambling, like betting on horse races, that was banned. Bright clothing was banned. Revealing clothing was not allowed. And ale houses, which is like a pub or a bar, those were also banned. But we are going to see pubs like ale houses as a setting for scenes that happen in the Crucible. So keep that in mind. Just because these things were banned does not necessarily mean that they weren't happening or that they didn't exist in this society. Theater was also banned. All books except for the Bible and a publication called The Pilgrim's Progress, all other books were banned. It was considered sinful to read other books. And things like cards and dice, games like that, banned, couldn't do them. So how did they stop people or catch people from doing these things? They had soldiers who were patrolling the streets, and they searched for anyone committing sinful acts that they thought were punishable. So what were the punishments for these kind of sins that they believed? People were usually fined, which means they had to pay money if they were caught doing these things. Some other times they were branded, which means you take hot metal and actually stamp a letter into someone's skin. So it's like you're burning the letter into their skin. And the letter usually corresponded to what crime you had committed. So that was like a symbol for all other people to see that you were a sinner and you had committed this crime. They also used stocks, which are these heavy wooden frames that have holes for either your ankles or your wrists, where you would have to put your arms into it and stay like stuck in that frame as a punishment. And then being whipped was also a punishment for these kind of sins or crimes. All right, so this brings us to the setting of the book, the play that we're about to start, The Crucible. It's set in 1692 in Salem, Massachusetts. You may have heard of Salem before because of the Salem witch trials, which is what we're going to be talking about with the Crucible. So this setting was not what we think of now as the United States democracy, but it was actually a theocracy, which means that the church and the state are not separated. So committing a crime is the same thing as like sinning against your religion in a theocracy. So you could be punished for not following the Bible, not going to church. All of those things were considered political crimes or things that you could be punished for. So why was this allowed to happen in Salem? We're going to look at some examples from history that kind of include themes that we will talk about in the Crucible. So this is a real story from history about a woman named Lizzie Borden. In August of 1892, her parents, Andrew and Abby, were brutally murdered in their Massachusetts home. And Lizzie was their daughter. She was actually there when they were murdered. She was arrested and put on trial for their murders. And it came to light that there was a lot of evidence that Lizzie was the one who had actually killed her parents. But she was acquitted on all charges, which means she was not found guilty. And the jury determined that because she was a woman, she could not have committed such a heinous crime. So the jury said a woman is not capable of murdering her parents because of her gender. She could not have committed this crime. So this is important. I want you to start thinking about how gender plays into the criminal justice system. This is going to be really important when we start talking about the Salem witch trials because most of the people accused of being witches in Salem were women. So we're going to be talking about gender and how that plays into crime and punishment while we read this play. So this is an example from history of a woman named Catherine who was murdered in 1964. She was stabbed to death outside of her apartment in New York City. And what's important about this case in history is that 36 people were said to have witnessed the murder. So they watched it happen and they did nothing to stop it. They didn't step in or help her. And this is known as something called the Bystander Effect, which is when large numbers of people or bystanders actually decrease the likelihood that someone will step forward and help the victim. So the bystander effect, this is a term used in psychology to describe the effect that occurs when the presence of large number of people make it a lot less likely that someone is going to help a victim. This is going to relate heavily to the Salem witch trials. We will see how so many people are going to stand by and watch their friends and their neighbors and their family members be accused of witchcraft, and they're not going to do anything about it because they're scared of what other people think. They're scared of what other people might do and maybe accuse them because they're helping a victim. So the bystander effect is going to be an important thing for us to think about as we start reading the Crucible. All right, so make sure you have your notes written down from this video in your packet, and then you can move on to the next step.